Hello darlings, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I made
as Noelle from Nier Automata.
Woo! As with any cosplay, the first piece is patterning. All of Noelle's outfit was drafted onto my dress form. This allowed me to get the shapes just right and figure out exactly how they need to contour to the body. Eventually, I needed to figure out fabric. It took a while, but I finally settled on this stretch taffeta. The stretch taffeta I went for a couple of reasons. It has quite the beautiful sheen. However, there were some things I had to worry about. This fabric only stretches one way. So we had that to work against. But the other perk on this one is that it actually frays, unlike most stretch fabrics. So I could use this for some added weathering on Noelle down the line. Keeping in mind the fabric stretch ratio and direction, that meant I had to play around quite a bit with how we needed this to go. So in the end, this top portion here had the stretch going widthwise. This way everything could fit and curve around my body without much worry. However, that meant when I got down to where it would attach and clasp together at the crotch, my fabric direction changed this way. With my fabric figured out, I jumped straight into sewing. The sleeves were done super fast and I only have this clipping footage from when I did them. But after that, we launched straight into the bodysuit. For this, I had to do 2 layers in order to make sure this was not opaque and you wouldn't be able to see through it. This entire suit was bag lined. Because this fabric frays, it needed to have some sort of lining, and I just used the taffeta as its own lining. This helped out so much. You could not see through no matter how far it stretched, and it was just such a helpful piece. So, don't mind the messy look. It's late. I've been working for a few hours. It's getting close to midnight, which means it's about time for me to call it a day because my personal rule never work past midnight. I do sometimes break it, but it always ends badly, so. So one thing that kind of sucks when you're doing cosplay is the size ratios of all your pieces is very different from majority of hardwares you're going to find in real life. Which means I had to actually sit down and take the time 3D model my own hardware. I've got some more printing, and then it's really hard to tell in here, but I've got a whole bunch of stuff currently getting washed, along with one of my silicone mixing sticks for my printers. This whole thing needs to get cleaned, but I have those washing for about 20 minutes. Yeah. It's a lot, but once those are done, I get to do a very light coat sanding, do a filler primer, and then they're getting painted silver. Except for one piece that I have yet to start printing on my resin printer, which is on her collar. There's like one of those little big clasp buckle squeezy thingies, safety buckles I think they were called. But finding one that is 3 inches tall is like fluffing impossible, so yeah, I had to model and now printing one, so hooray! When I'm done with this build, everything is getting published as a bundle. That way other people can buy and you don't have to go through the hell that I've gone through the last few weeks. So I'm going to bed. More work in the morning. Honestly, I think the toughest part about doing all the resin printing is the tiny bits of cleanup that you have to do throughout the entire process. From all of the washing and curing times, into the support removal, dealing with the chemicals, it can be pretty rough, but I still love it as it gives me such beautiful results. To make the straps, I measured the inner length of my little clasp pieces, doubled that, took out just a little bit for my wiggle room first measuring it, sewed some pipes, flattened it, and then I stitched them on decently close. For these, I also ended up pinking them later once I had the sizes where I wanted them. Once all of these were attached to their pieces, I sewed them into the upper side seams of the bodysuit. From there, we could finally get the bodysuit fully assembled and attach the crotch piece. For this, I essentially inverted a lot of it, and you can see inside doing the pillowcase flip. At the crotch seam, I kept this wide, that way I could adjust it later, and thankfully, because this area did not need to stretch widthwise, I could use a straight stitch. Finding a good height of leather was rough. When we traveled down to C2E2 down in Chicago, we went to the fabric outlets, I think it was called. I knew I wanted an older hide that was already aged and quite distressed, but it was difficult to look through everything. That place was filled. When we finally got home, I cut out 2-inch strips. It was pretty fun. I am happy to be working with leather again. Then I started dyeing the pieces with Angelus black dye. By this time, I was starting to hit con crunch. I always say I'm going to avoid it. Something always happens, and I end up doing it anyway. I did not get video of doing the adjustments, but I essentially held the leather up to my body while wearing the suit, marked where I wanted to put it with pen, and then stitched them on top. I had to use my Teflon foot because leather does get kind of sticky even after it's wiped down. I did avoid conditioning this leather because I wanted it to look rougher and more distressed. From there, I got to top stitch everything, and it looks so nice and clean and crisp, and it was just so worth all of the hassle to make sure this detail worked with everything else. The collar on the suit was extremely tough. I had to redo this part 3 times because of how this stretches only one way. I had to open the neck a little, adjust the length. I did not want a super tall collar. They get really frustrating to me. Eating is difficult, talking is a chore. You have to pull it down to breathe and do a lot of things. So I ended up cutting mine down just a little bit and adjusted the size for the buckle and its strap in order to fit. The other issue for this was because of how it all attached, I needed to adjust it so much just to make it work on me. Finally, all the little details on the back. She has multiple layers of strapping just going down, and in order to make sure it would not mess with the way this suit stretched and moved with my body, a lot of areas were only tacked down very slightly. This meant that up in the neck it would not pull in and I could still get my neck through without worrying about breaking a seam, but I had to be very careful and make sure I marked out everything as I was going and make my adjustments as I saw fit. I had my reference on hand so much through this build. Seriously, I highly recommend printing out your reference just so you have something right there to look at when you do not want to look at a screen. And with this cut, that was the last piece I needed to adjust for the entire suit. Once this was sewn down, it was finally finished, and up here, because it's where my collar attached, is where I ended up using just a few tacking stitch right at the center back. And finally, Noelle was done and ready to go on stage. At this point, Noelle has won both a Best Prop for her spear and a Best in Show.